The room laughed, not because something was funny, but because someone was being crushed in public, and laughing felt safer than speaking up. Alyssa Brooks stood there, a black woman in a fine dining uniform, holding a tray that suddenly felt heavier than her own body. A white millionaire leaned back in his chair, waving money like a weapon, daring her to speak English for his amusement. Every second stretched, every breath burned. She knew this moment could cost her everything: her job, her safety, her future. Yet something inside her snapped. Not anger, not pride, dignity. The kind that rises when silence becomes unbearable. As the room waited for her to shrink, Alyssa made a choice that would turn laughter into shame, power into fear, and a quiet restaurant into a battlefield of truth. Stay with this story, because what happens next will shock everyone who thought this was just a joke. The first thing Alyssa Brooks noticed was the laughter, not the warm kind, not the kind that lifts a room. This laughter was sharp, careless, the kind that landed on skin like a slap and pretended it was a joke. The ivory room was glowing that night, soft golden lights, crystal glasses catching reflections, low jazz humming beneath conversations. It was the kind of place where people came to feel important, where money didn't just pay for food, it bought silence, obedience, and the illusion of superiority. Alyssa adjusted the strap of her apron and steadied the tray in her hands. She had learned long ago how to walk through rooms like this without shrinking, chin up, shoulders relaxed, eyes calm. She had learned that surviving spaces built to ignore you required discipline, not defiance, at least not yet. At the center table sat a group of men in tailored suits, watches flashing every time they lifted their glasses. One voice dominated the rest, confident, loud, practiced. Richard Hale. Alyssa didn't know his name yet, but she recognized the type. The way he leaned back as if the world owed him comfort. The way his words weren't meant to communicate, only to perform. She approached the table with a professional smile. "Good evening. May I take your order?" Richard looked up slowly. His eyes traveled over her. Not leering, not curious, just measuring, like she was part of the furniture. He smirked. "I'll give you $1,000, he said casually, swirling the wine in his glass, "if you serve us in English." The table erupted. Someone slapped the wood. Someone nearly spilled a drink. The laughter rolled outward, infecting nearby tables, turning Alyssa into a spectacle she never consented to be part of. Alyssa didn't move. She felt the familiar heat crawl up her neck, the old instinct to disappear. The quiet voice that said, "Don't make this harder. Just smile. Just get through the shift." She glanced around. A few diners looked away, uncomfortable. Others watched with interest. No one spoke. Richard leaned forward, enjoying the pause. "Come on," he said. "It's not that hard, right? I mean, English isn't exactly your thing, is it?" Another ripple of laughter. This wasn't just about language. Alyssa knew that. It never was. This was about what he assumed when he saw her skin, about who he thought she was allowed to be. Behind the bar, Megan Whitfield, the floor manager, stiffened. Alyssa saw her hesitate, just a second too long. Megan knew who Richard Hale was. Everyone did. A man like him didn't just eat in places like this. He owned influence here. Alyssa inhaled slowly. She thought of her apartment on the south side, of Jordan, her little brother, hunched over the kitchen table that morning, practicing vocabulary for a test she didn't have time to help him study for. "You sound just like me," he'd said proudly. "That's because words matter," she had told him, "and so does knowing when to use them." Her fingers tightened, not with fear but with resolve. Richard tilted his head, amused by her silence. "What? You need me to slow down?" The room waited. Alyssa set the tray down gently. Then she looked him straight in the eye. "Would you like to start with the wine list?" she said evenly, her voice clear and calm. "Or should I begin by teaching you some basic manners first?" The silence was instant. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't explosive. It was total. Forks froze midair. Glasses hovered inches from lips. Even the jazz faltered, as if the band had missed a beat. Richard blinked. For the first time since she'd approached the table, his smile faltered. Not vanished, but cracked. You speak English?" he asked, forcing a laugh that didn't land. Alyssa's expression didn't change. I speak it well enough to recognize disrespect, she replied, and to know when someone is confusing confidence with cruelty. A low murmur rippled through the room, this time not laughter, but something closer to awe or shame. Richard straightened, his jaw tightening. Well, he said lightly, though his voice wobbled, looks like someone's been watching a lot of YouTube. A few nervous chuckles followed. They died quickly. Alyssa picked up her tray. If you're ready to order, she said, back in her professional tone, I'll be happy to assist. If not, I can give you a moment. She turned and walked away. Her legs felt steady. Her heart was not. Behind her, Richard Hale sat frozen, staring into his glass as if it might offer him a way out. Something unfamiliar pressed against his chest. Not anger, not humiliation alone, but recognition. An uncomfortable glimpse of himself reflected back by a woman he had decided, in seconds, was beneath him. Megan finally exhaled and rushed over to Alyssa near the service station. Are you okay? She whispered urgently. You didn't have to. Yes, Alyssa interrupted softly. I did. Megan swallowed. You know who that is, right? I know exactly who he thinks he is, Alyssa replied. The rest of the night moved differently. People looked at Alyssa longer, some with admiration, some with irritation, some with the quiet fear of those realizing they'd laughed too easily. Richard stayed. He didn't call for a manager. He didn't storm out. He sat there alone after his companions left early, staring at the space where Alyssa had stood. Power had always worked for him, until it didn't. And Alyssa, still carrying plates, still smiling politely, felt something shift deep inside her. Not victory, not revenge, something stronger, dignity. She didn't know yet that this moment would cost her far more than a table's approval. She didn't know the whispers would follow, or that standing her ground would put her job, her future, and her sense of safety at risk. All she knew was this. For the first time in a long time, she had not stayed silent, and nothing in that room would ever feel the same again. Before we continue, this moment changed everything, but not in the way Alyssa expected. Now I want to hear from you. If you were in her place, would you have stayed silent to protect your job? Yes or no? Your answers matter. The morning after felt heavier than the night itself. Alyssa Brooks stood at the bus stop on the south side, the city still half asleep around her. Cold air crept through her coat as she watched steam rise from the pavement. Chicago mornings had a way of reminding you where you stood, who was rushing toward comfort, and who was simply trying to survive another day. Her phone buzzed. A message from Megan. Can you come in early today? Management wants to talk. Alyssa read it twice. She didn't need to ask what it was about. At home, Jordan sat at the small kitchen table, cereal untouched, his school backpack slung over the chair. He looked up at her with that familiar mix of trust and admiration that both warmed and terrified her. You okay? He asked. Alyssa forced a smile. Yeah, just tired. He nodded, then added, My teacher says we're talking about civil rights today. Alyssa paused. That's good, she said carefully. Jordan tilted his head. Is it true people still get treated different because they're black? The question landed harder than any insult from the night before. She knelt beside him. Yes, she said, but that doesn't mean we stop being proud of who we are. When she stood, she felt the weight of that promise pressing against her chest. The ivory room looked the same as always. Polished floors, immaculate tables, soft music drifting through the air. But the energy had changed. Whispers followed her. Some servers avoided her eyes. Others gave small nods of respect. A few looked at her like she was trouble waiting to happen. Megan met her near the bar, her face tense. They're in the office, as she whispered. Diane's here. Alyssa exhaled slowly. The owner. Inside the office, Diane Keller sat with her hands folded neatly on the desk. Elegant, calm, controlled. The kind of woman who believed fairness existed as long as it didn't interfere with business. Alyssa, Diane said pleasantly, please, sit. Alyssa remained standing. I've received multiple complaints about last night, Diane continued. A guest felt disrespected. Alyssa nodded. I was disrespected first. Diane smiled tightly. That's not the issue. Of course it wasn't. The issue, Diane said, is perception. Our clientele expects a certain atmosphere. Alyssa heard the words beneath the words. Know your place. I spoke professionally, Alyssa replied. I didn't insult anyone. But you embarrassed him, Diane said. And he's not just anyone. There it was. Power, money, the unspoken rule that dignity had a price, and Alyssa couldn't afford it. We value your work here, Diane added smoothly. But going forward, I need to know you can avoid situations like that. Alyssa's voice stayed steady. Avoid racism? Diane's eyes hardened for a brief second before the smile returned. You're free to clock in today, she said. We'll revisit this later. It wasn't reassurance, it was a warning. Richard Hale read the headline twice before closing his laptop. Tech investor under fire after restaurant incident. Someone had filmed it, of course they had. The comments were worse. Some praised Alyssa, others mocked her. Many defended him, calling it just a joke, accusing her of being too sensitive, asking why everything had to be about race. Richard leaned back in his chair, his office stretching behind him like a fortress of glass and steel. He had been humiliated before, in boardrooms and negotiations, but never like that. Never by someone with no power to lose. And yet, he couldn't stop thinking about her composure. The way she hadn't raised her voice, the way she hadn't begged. For the first time, the thought crept in uninvited. What if I was wrong? The rumors moved faster than Alyssa could. A food blogger posted about the brave black waitress. A local radio show debated whether she'd been out of line. A customer asked Megan quietly if Alyssa was that girl from the video. Then just before dinner service, Diane called her back into the office. This time, Diane wasn't alone. A man in a tailored suit stood by the window, hands in his pockets. Richard Hale. Alyssa froze. I asked to be here, Richard said quietly. Diane looked uncomfortable. Mr. Hale wanted to clarify things. Clarify, as if dignity were a misunderstanding. Alyssa, Richard said, turning to her. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. She laughed, once, sharp and bitter. You didn't mean to humiliate me, she said, but you did. The room tightened. Richard swallowed. I've been thinking about what you said. That makes one of us, Alyssa replied. Diane cleared her throat. We're not here to argue. No, Alyssa said calmly. You're here to decide whether I'm disposable. Silence fell. Richard looked at Diane. Is she being punished for standing up for herself? Diane stiffened. We're protecting the restaurant. By silencing her? Richard asked. Alyssa stared at him, disbelief flickering across her face. He turned back to her. I was wrong, he said, and I'm not proud of it. She studied him carefully. This wasn't arrogance. It wasn't performance. But it wasn't trust either. I don't need your apology, Alyssa said. I need my job not to depend on my silence. Diane's lips pressed together. Richard exhaled. Then I should tell you something. He faced Diane fully. I acquired a controlling interest in the ivory room last week. The words landed like a dropped plate. Diane's face drained of color. You... what? I wasn't planning to announce it this way, Richard said, but here we are. Alyssa felt dizzy. This wasn't protection. This was power shifting hands, and she was standing in the middle of it. No one here will be disciplined for speaking up, Richard continued, especially not Alyssa. Diane said nothing. The decision had been made without her. That night, Alyssa walked home under streetlights that flickered like tired witnesses. She should have felt relieved. Instead, her chest ached, because safety that came from someone else's power felt fragile, conditional, temporary. At home, Jordan ran to her. Did you get fired? He asked breathlessly. She shook her head and pulled him close. No, she said softly, not today. As he slept later, Alyssa sat by the window, city noise humming below. She hadn't asked Richard to intervene. She hadn't wanted to be rescued. She wanted a world where she didn't need saving just for telling the truth. And deep down, she knew this story wasn't over. Because power rarely gives up without demanding something in return. And dignity, once claimed, always comes at a cost. Change didn't arrive with applause. It arrived quietly, the way truth usually does. Uneasy, slow, and unwilling to be ignored. In the days that followed, the ivory room felt like a place holding its breath. Conversations lowered when Alyssa walked past. Some guests smiled too politely, as if trying to prove something. Others avoided her altogether. The power in the room had shifted, but it hadn't settled. Alyssa noticed everything. She noticed how managers suddenly asked for her input, how the same people who once rushed her now waited for her opinion. She noticed how that attention felt less like respect and more like guilt disguised as courtesy. And she noticed Richard Hale watching her, not from a place of control this time, but from uncertainty. One afternoon, he asked to speak with her privately. Alyssa didn't answer right away. "Only if it's not about the restaurant," she said finally, "and not about fixing your image." Richard nodded. "Fair." They met outside on the sidewalk, the city loud enough to strip away pretense. He didn't wear a suit this time, no polished shoes, just a man standing without armor. "I've been trying to understand why that moment shook me," he said. "And the truth is, I didn't like what I saw in myself." Alyssa crossed her arms. "That's not my burden to carry." "I know," he replied quickly. "That's why I'm not asking for forgiveness." She studied him. "So why are you here?" "Because power taught me to speak," Richard said. "You taught me to listen." The words lingered between them. "I grew up believing success meant never being questioned," he continued. "And when you questioned me, I realized how often I'd used my voice to take space from others." Alyssa's voice was calm. "Acknowledging that doesn't undo the harm." "I know," he said again, "but it can change what comes next." She took a slow breath. "Then start by understanding this. I didn't speak up to teach you a lesson. I did it so I could sleep at night." Richard nodded. "Then I won't ask you to speak for anyone else, only to keep being who you are." She looked away, watching people pass, each carrying their own invisible battles. "That's all I ever planned to do," she said. The real test came a week later. A meeting was called. Staff gathered, executives joined via video. Richard stood at the front, not as an owner, but as someone who had finally chosen responsibility over silence. He didn't mention Alyssa by name at first. He spoke about systems, about how professionalism had often been used to excuse disrespect, about how humor had been weaponized to humiliate, about how race didn't always enter the room loudly, but it was always there. Then he turned to Alyssa. "She stood her ground without shouting," he said, "without insults, without hate, and that scared me more than anger ever could." The room was still. "I won't pretend this fixes everything," Richard continued, "but this place will no longer punish dignity, and if that costs us customers, so be it." No one clapped, but no one objected either. That night, Alyssa walked home lighter than she had in months. At the apartment, Jordan waited for her with a piece of paper folded carefully in half. "I wrote something," he said shyly. She opened it. It was a short paragraph about a girl who spoke up when everyone told her not to, about how being brave didn't mean being loud, about how words could change rooms. Tears blurred her vision. "Did you write this?" she asked. Jordan nodded. "I want to be like you." Alyssa hugged him tightly. "Be better," she whispered, "and kinder." Weeks passed. The attention faded. The headlines moved on. The world, as it always does, found a new story. But something remained. Alyssa re-enrolled at Chicago State University. Night classes, scholarships earned, not handed. She kept working at the Ivory Room, but on her terms. She trained new staff. She spoke openly about boundaries. She refused to let silence be mistaken for professionalism. Richard stepped back from daily operations. He funded programs without attaching his name to them. When asked about the incident, he said only this: "I didn't lose power, I lost an illusion." They crossed paths occasionally, always respectfully, always at a distance. No debt, no savior. Just two people changed by the same moment for different reasons. On a quiet evening, Alyssa locked up the restaurant and stepped outside. The city stretched before her, messy, imperfect, alive. She thought about how easily that night could have broken her, how close she'd come to choosing safety over self-respect. And she smiled, because dignity hadn't come from winning, it came from standing, not for applause, not for approval, but because silence would have cost her more. If this story moved you, let me ask you something. Do you believe one moment of courage can truly change a life? Yes or no? Do you think Alyssa's choice was worth the risk she took? Yes or no? Did this story make you reflect on how you treat people in everyday moments? Yes or no? If you like this story, comment 111 below, so we know you stayed until the end. Tell us which country you're watching from. And if you believe stories like this matter, please share this video so more people can hear it. Your voice matters too.